All here for Let's Discuss with Lance All. Happy to welcome an old friend, Jarvis Leatherby of the band Night Demon, to the program today. Jarvis, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Lance. Thanks so much, man.
We were chatting here just for a minute before we started recording. We have both been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, upwards of a decade now, which
Yeah.
we were a lot younger then, and we feel younger now.
I was gonna say we're still pretty. We're still so pretty, you know? New Night Demon album out, Outsiders, coming out March 17th, I should say. St. Patrick's Day, great day to have a beer and listen to some metal, right?
Right.
Is that the plan?
Well, yeah, we're actually playing at the Whiskey A Go Go that night in West Hollywood, and there's an Irish pub right next door. So that's the
Nice.
plan.
All right. Now, I've looked, you've done a ton of interviews for this album, and I wanted to try and ask you. I mean, obviously, I'm going to ask you some of the standard questions, but I wanted to ask you some of the nuts and bolts questions that I'm hoping nobody has asked about this album.
Okay, fire
Let's
away.
get into, well, a little bit of the story first. You've got a quote on the top of the lyric sheet. I don't dare to pronounce the name, but it's from 1120 AD.
Yeah. Okay. Um, that's probably not the best to start with,
Okay.
but yeah. So Outsider is a concept album, right?
Right.
Um, it's based on a screenplay that I wrote. Um, when I finished the story, and I kind of had like what I felt was a final draft. My girlfriend's father gave me a book um, by the person you just mentioned with that quote, and I opened up the book and that quote was in there, and like right away, it's the first thing that I saw,
Mm,
and it's for some there was some synchronicity there. For some reason, it kind of just summed up exactly what I wrote about, what I had spent months writing about, and so I thought, with this being kind of a cinematic feel anyway, most movies have a log line, or you'll watch a lot of films where it starts out with a quote from somebody,
right.
the writer of the movie. And I thought, well, there's a sign here that's there. So that's why that's in there.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Where did you get, you said this came from an idea from a screenplay that you had
Right.
written. Where did you get the idea for the screenplay from?
Well, I've written a few in the past. All the Night Demon albums, from our first full length Curse of the Damned to our second album, Darkness Remains, they both started out as concept albums and veered off the track pretty quickly. It's a tough thing to do through and through. On Curse of the Damned, we had a friend make a comic book, and we there are some tie-ins to some of the songs there with that story. On Darkness Remains, there's a trilogy of songs that kind of tell a story, and it's all related to the cover art as well. On this record, we were just like, let's just do it. Let's find a way to stick to it, and the storyline kind of coming first helped a lot. It's a lot more challenging writing music to a theme, but that's just the way it had to go for us to complete something like this.
Yeah, very cool. Very, very cool. Have you been asked much about, I always look at, I'm an old school metal guy. First thing I want to tell you is this album took me back to the 80s. You know,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's got a modern feel to it, but it's got a great 80s vibe to it?
Great. Good.
And a lot of it comes along with the guitar and your vocals, which I want to get into in a little bit, but I want to get into this. Of course, I was thrilled to get the picture of the lyric sheet and everything that comes with the album. And by the way, this morning I ordered the album. Um,
Thanks.
I was thrilled to get all that, and I always like to look at the mixers, the engineers, the people. Like in the old days. You always saw your Iron Maiden albums, produced by, and God, the name who produced all the Maiden albums, or Van Halen was always Ted Templeman, and you look at who did this and who did that.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
so have you been asked about, like, I saw the album was mixed by Kurt Ballou at what is this, God City Studios in Salem, Mass?
Right.
Had you worked with him much?
He mixed the track Visteria, one of the singles that we released in 2020. We've been trying to lock him down for a long time. He's a super busy guy, but he really just kind of understands our sound and was able to take what we put down on tape and enhance it a bit, you know. I if I had it my way, I'd do everything with him from here on out. And I'm going to try to do that.
Was this your first time working with him?
No, he mixed one track for us before,
Okay,
but
okay,
this
you did say that. I'm
time,
sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, but
Yeah,
this is the first time he's done a full length record for us. Yeah.
okay. Then it was mastered by Bob Boatwright in Portland, Oregon. So this thing literally went coast to coast.
Yeah, Brad worked a lot with Kurt before, so they're kind of like a duo when it comes to mixing and mastering. And Brad really understands his stuff. And I've worked with Brad before on a couple other projects. So yeah, it was a nice thing because we were on the road when this was all happening. So it was nice for him to be able to hand it over to a guy that he works with a lot, and it was great.
Yeah. And then, of course, Armin, your guitar player, engineered everything. What he had done some engineering. That's how you guys sort of met, correct?
No, we met when we were kids, actually. We were just
Okay.
playing in band. But yeah, he has engineered and produced all the Night Demon stuff to date, even before he was in the band. So like it's this time we didn't even use an assistant engineer. It was just the three of us in the studio, but it was really nice to do that. It was like a low pressure situation, obviously we're a lot more people around each other. So yeah, that was the way to do it. And again, I think it's like we kind of found our stride here. We've recorded with a lot of different people in the past, and on this singles campaign, we've went around the world and recorded with like our bucket list of producers for one song each. And now we kind of just realized, I mean, we're just better off doing it on our own.
Rather than try to explain to a producer the sound you're hearing in your head, you guys can just capture it, you know?
Yeah, we kind of think of ourselves as producers in our own right. So as long
Mm.
as there's the band there to bounce ideas off of each other or to keep each other in check, I think that's enough. Producers are really good for bands that don't have a lot of direction. But obviously when you're doing a concept record, I mean, you know exactly where things are going.
Right, right. And then, of course, talk about the illustration and design on the album. Don Fury, had you worked with him? That's a great design on the album.
Yeah, he's done all of our album covers, so we have that kind of cohesiveness with him. He's an old friend of ours too. He's an art director over at Warner, but I've known him since before he was even doing stuff for any bands. And so we've had a great relationship with him, and he's always there in the wings, to do our album art.
Cool. And then, of course, you and Laura did most of the lyrics. How did that
Yeah,
go with that?
well, look, like writing a screenplay, I mean, I know the story front and back, but when it came to the lyrics, I kind of needed some outside input because the concept albums that I don't like are the ones that are very literal, that kind of walk you through the story.
Mhm.
It's just there's two different mediums. There's story writing and then there's songwriting, and I think that just makes for bad songwriting. And so it was good to get her input on some more metaphorical lyrics to the story. So we worked pretty close together on that, and it was nice. I got to get out of my own head for a minute.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. I've said this in a kabillion interviews. I admire anybody who can write a song. I can write some stories. I wouldn't even know how to begin to write a song, you know?
Well, that's just it. You just have to begin. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I was thinking the other day about the first song I ever wrote, a song called "Private Hell," and I mean that was I don't know 25 plus years ago. So it's just it's a like any skill, it's just something that you have to practice at.
Yeah. I want to jump into the album. Of course, you sent me the download to listen to and stuff. Great, great album. Listen to it through headphones, so I was able to get all the nuances in it. And like I said, it took me back to the 80s, and I grew up in that era, of the new wave of British heavy metal and the hair band stuff and all that. I graduated high school in 82. I absorbed it all. Um, so funny. I had a girl message me on Facebook when Motley Crue's The Dirt movie came out. She goes, "Have you seen this movie yet?" And I'm like, "Well, no, but I kind of lived it. I was there. She's like, oh, you've got to see it. And I'm like, but I was there.
Like all movies, it does no justice to the book.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah. I
book
said,
is
I've read the book.
insane. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Opening track Prelude. To me, this is a tune where you like cross Iron Maiden with the Chariots of Fire theme, you know?
I mean, it's just the album opener. It's the film opener, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a
Loved it.
set. Yeah.
Loved it. Then, of course, goes into the title track Outsider. I love the timing changes you guys throw in a lot of these songs. This was a note I put down on this song, but you do a lot of timing changes in a lot of these songs.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of that has to do with the story, you know. I mean, we have to kind of direct the music to where what's happening in the story. So there's a lot of dramatic twists and turns, and that
mhm.
has to reflect musically. That was a huge challenge for us, but again, it proved right because it really gets the point across.
It
And
makes you kind of snap to attention, you know.
yeah,
You can get in
right.
some songs and kind of lull you to sleep, but then this timing change comes and it's like, okay, you got me now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Not that any of these songs lulled me to sleep, but you know, you get into some that just sort of go on and on and on, you know? The lyric I liked out of this song was beware when walking down forbidden roads, for what you see cannot be untold.
Yes.
That was a killer lyric, based on a
Also,
life experience or
well, no. So, I mean, it's all based on this story. So, again, look, like you, that's a great question because that means we did our job. The lyrics are written metaphorically. So, to the casual listener, that can mean a lot of things. The storyline is for the hardcore fans, you know.
yeah.
But in our story, the main character leaves his small town down a solitary road and ends up in another dimension, basically like an alternate version of his reality. It's in the same place. He ends up in the same place, but everybody's different. Everybody's lived a kind of different life, you know. So
Mhm.
he was, kind of trying to go out into the world and see what was out there, right?
Yeah.
And he ends up, you know, the grass is always greener, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Uh, Next track, Obsidian. Killer guitar solo in this. As you know, I'm a guitar solo guy. Love the solo in this song. I looked up what Obsidian was. Like the thing I got was a volcanic glass, or can be like a protective stone. Is that what this was meant with Obsidian, or am I
So
reaching too
again,
far on this?
yeah, again, going into the metaphorical speak, at this part in the story, the main character runs into like a shadow version of himself. Um, so like a dark mirror. So
Okay.
like obsidian is like it's like a reflective, almost like, especially when obsidian is polished, it's you can see yourself in it. It's like a black
Yes.
rock, black
Yes.
mirror. Yeah.
Cool. Um, Track four, Beyond the Grave. This is where I really noticed how far you've come vocally. You know, we talked about it briefly there at the top. Yeah, I went back and watched the original Night Demon video, you know, and stuff. I mean, great stuff. But to me, to my ear, your vocals have really come so far. And I was reading in an old interview, one of your first press releases, and I'm not bringing this up to be negative. I want to bring this up to show how you persevered over this. One of your first press pieces was when you were like 16, and somebody sort of slammed your vocals then, but yet you took lessons, you worked at your craft, you practiced. And to me, this is where that perseverance showed up.
Yeah, thank you. That is a true story. Throughout the years, I've studied with many different vocal coaches. And during the pandemic, I was pushing 40 years old, and I thought, I could get better. There's no way that I can't. The thing is, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You need natural musical talent. You need, uh, your voice is only good for a certain amount of years when you're young. That's all crap. And
Right.
so I got an even another new vocal coach when the pandemic started, and I just worked my ass off during that 2-year break. and just sang as much as I could, and channeled different things that I wanted to do, and went other places that I hadn't been. And it was just kind of the small things that I adjusted that made a huge difference. Mostly on the albums, I double my vocals because it kind of thickens them up.
Mm-hmm.
Trick that a lot of people do, but I just kind of thought, like, let's just get a good vocal sound. Let me just do one single pass at them with just my voice without doubling them, and let me get the real performances in there that really kind of bring that emotion across, and it's great because I had to do half the work. but but not really. A lot of the work was in prep, and yeah, I had a really cool story to work with. I had some stake in the game. It's like there was something behind it. And when you write a fictitious story, it's great because it's not so personal. So you can really get there mentally and not be self-conscious about anything, and feel like overly righteous about anything. So that was a really cool thing to do, and it helped me a lot as far as my delivery on the vocals, when I can get there mentally about what I'm actually singing about.
Yeah, yeah. And sort of the moral of the story is to, listen, but don't listen to the haters, and use it as fuel for your fire, and persevere, correct?
Yeah, I would say don't listen to the haters. It's kind of hard to shut everything out, like stuff seeps through and you do hear and see things, but yeah, you got to use some of that stuff as fuel. But it's also a known fact that success breeds haters as well. So I mean, if they're
Exactly.
talking about you, you're doing something right, but it's good to be able to not just eject that stuff, but like you said, really use it for something good. I mean, you,
Right,
you can do that. You can use that as a form of motivation almost.
right, right. Track 6, Escape from Beyond. You just put a video out for this one. This was a banger. I got my note here is banger. This is my favorite track on the album. I really,
It's for me too. Yeah, thank you. Short and sweet, typical Night Demon song. Big chorus, awesome bridge section. I mean,
yeah.
it's a great one. Yeah, I'm really happy with the way that song came out. And that was like one of the last ones we wrote for the album too. Kind of when we were like going, okay, like how are we tying this thing together musically? What do we have left in the tank? And it turned out to be one of the best songs on it.
Well, that's cool. So that's one thing I'll delve into this though. When it came to sequencing the album, then was that tough for you? You had, say, if this was your last song, you've got it stuck in at track 6, but it was the last song you wrote for the album. Was it tough
No,
sequencing because you had old and new stuff in there?
No, because we already had holes for the sequencing based on the story. So we knew, yeah, when some of the songs were written a bit out of order, but we already knew where those songs would be, and the way it was going.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So jump down to track 8, The Wraith, epic closer. To me, this is like your Hallowed Be Thy Name, you know?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most ambitious song we've ever done, and it's the longest song we've ever done. Night Demon's not known for long songs, but
Yeah.
it needed to be this length, and it takes you on a journey. It goes somewhere. It's not a long song that just repeats itself, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, this is the big climax, the finale of the story and of the album, and it really hits hard.
Yeah. And here's where I think you have done your job to perfection, because fabulous album. And then I read the story, and after both reading the story and hearing the album, while I was fully satisfied, I wanted more. And isn't that the secret, to like a great meal? You want to be full, but you don't want to be overstuffed. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that from the feedback that I've heard so far is that this album kind of took people by surprise a bit with all of the progressive tendencies and all of the dynamics and stuff. And but upon more listens, people started to really understand it. And I think that's the beauty. When you talk about, hey, Night Demon's coming out with a concept album, it's like, sure, people are like, oh man, okay, what is this double LP? like, how much time do I have to invest in, you know,
Right.
and do I figure out the story? It's like, no, we wrote the story in there. So you know what it is, and a synopsis of it, at least track by track, and it's under 35 minutes. So it's not a huge time investment. A lot of things happen in that 35 minutes though. And yeah, we want to give that feeling that it makes you want to go back and listen to it again. And so,
Right.
some of my favorite albums are 30 minutes, so
Yeah.
it's really cool that we were able to. I think that's the secret there. We said everything we needed to say in that amount of time, and we got out when we did. If it was any longer, I don't know if it would have had the same impact.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I agree. I mean, you think back in the day, the real trick was to put an album out that was 45 minutes. You could put it on one side of a TDK SA90, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that type of thing. But yeah, 30 minutes is 30, 35 minutes is great. Um, Tour starts, you mentioned St. Patty's Day at the Whiskey. You end April 15th in Philly at the Foundry Decibel Metal and Beer Fest pre-party. Got to be looking forward to that one as well. That sounds like it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, man. I mean, Decibel Magazine's been a big champion of ours for a long time. We've got the lead review in their magazine this next month, and they've given us this album a 9 out of 10, which is good. I don't think they've ever given a 10 out of 10, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
so
cool.
up to be back there.
I'll ask one question. I'm sure you've been asked this, but I haven't heard the answer yet. Did any concept albums influence you as you were getting into music? You think back, like for me, I immediately go to like the Crimson Idol by Wasp, Were there any along
Uh,
the way that you were into?
Operation Mindcrime,
Yeah.
I think that's the best metal album, the concept album. I did see Wasp recently. Um, and they did place a few tracks off the Crimson Idol, and I kind of like would rather hear the whole thing together, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's good. Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I hope we made a good one.
I think you made a great one. I think you made a great one. Now, we talked about the tour in the States, and you're doing like Japan, UK, Ireland, Europe, South America, Mexico. You guys are going everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. That's how we do it. That's how we stay alive. I mean, that's our job, going out there and touring. So yeah, I mean, look, we're looking forward to it. And on the headlining tours, I think we're going to be playing the album in its entirety from front to back. But again, it's under 35 minutes, so you still get 10 Night Demon classics in that set. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's good to be back out there and doing stuff. We did 100 shows in 2022, and that felt, it was hard, man. Like, one of the things about the pandemic, it's like, oh yeah, like, we're so excited to get back. It's been a couple years, 2.5 years, but you forget that you've aged 2.5 years during that time too. So it's like, man, you gotta really get back to you gotta really adjust, getting back to just traveling every day and playing every night. So,
Get your chops
but
back and stuff like that. Yeah,
God, I know. But
And like you
but
said, filling the 1 hour that you're on stage is easy. It's the other 23 hours that can sometimes be the biggest challenge of all.
it is. There's just so much travel, lack of sleep, and that's really it. I mean, you got to get to where you're playing, and then you got to set up and do it again and then tear it all down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one day we'll be a band that plays one show a month.
Do you do anything special on the road to keep your voice going, intact, healthy?
Um, well, rest is good, hydration is good, and that's pretty much it. I used to warm up before the shows. I don't really do so anymore. I do a really quick one. There's a couple different vocal hacks that I have, like vocal exercises and stuff. But yeah, that's really it. Just stay hydrated and get enough rest, because those are the two things that'll kill your voice first. And like, you got to look at everything else as like 5%. Like, sugar's 5%, caffeine's 5%, alcohol is probably 10, like, to the detriment of your voice, right? So
Yeah,
nobody's perfect, and you
right.
can do things here and there, but like, you gotta look at the accumulation of all those things, right? You put all those things together, and it's gonna screw you up.
Definitely. We talked about some of the places you're going, like UK, Europe, where you have massive followings over there. How is it, say, like when you get to like South America or Japan? Are the fans just as rabid? We know how the Europeans roll, and I admire that, and I'm jealous of that. How is it in other parts of the world?
In Japan, they're very respectful. They'll go crazy after the song, but once the song starts, they're like silent, you know,
Mhm.
and they're like, okay, it's time to hear the song. And then after, it's like, okay, time for applause, you know. In South America, they're just completely nuts. Um, Somebody bit me once on stage, like just because they were excited. Like they weren't trying to hurt me. They're very rambunctious down there, but
Now that brings up a story. I was going to wait to ask you this, but as long as you bring that up, I read a story where you were playing in Canada with Raven, and there was some drunk guy who kept shouting the entire show. You invite him up on stage to speak his piece into the microphone, and he promptly took a swing at you.
no, I didn't invite him up on
He
stage.
just came up.
Actually, did I? I might have.
That's the way it read in the interview I read. You couldn't quite make out what he was saying, so you like kind of invited him up to say what he had to say, and he promptly took a swing at you.
That's right. That is how that went down. Yeah, that is how that went down.
And then
Uh,
your drummer, Dusty, jumped over the kit and like body slammed him.
yeah, he like form tackled him into the audience, you know. But yeah, that was an interesting thing, and then the crowd was chanting "Fight Demon."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, interesting times for sure.
I wanted to get just briefly into your background because I don't know if we've ever talked much about this, how your metal journey began. I know you started playing guitar around 14.
I think I was like 12, but it's
Well,
really was 14 though. Maybe I was 13, 14, something like that. I went to a Christian school, and they showed us, this was like at the height of the satanic panic, you know, and they
mhm,
kind of showed us this movie called Hell's Bells. It was like a 3 hour documentary
mhm,
about the dangers of rock and roll.
yeah,
And, you know, I would say like 90% of my class like really bought into it, and you know, brought all their CDs to and tapes to school, and were smashing them with hammers and stuff. And me and a couple of other guys just really got turned on by it, and we were like, man, this is incredible. Like, this is what we need to do with our lives. So that, you know, we started a band right away.
mm,
um it was really just, I don't know. I finally had that sense of rebellion, you know, and had an
mm,
outlet for it. And I was really into the esoteric philosophies. You know, they were trying to spin it as a bunch of shit that, like, um, you know, we all know that, you know, this music causes you to kill yourself. There's
mm,
Satanists, all this
mhm,
stuff, you know.
mhm,
But that kind of turned me on, to be honest, like the satanic aspect of it. And I started to read the satanic Bible and get into Satanism stuff, and realize that, man, this stuff that Anton LaVey is talking about is a threat to the norm. It has nothing to do with being evil or killing people or anything like that. It's about freedom and self expression, and being true to who you are as an individual. And it was, I think, you know, the fact that using the name Satan made it so controversial. As my one of the guys that one of my favorite authors, Mitch Horowitz, he likes to call Satanism, what does he say? It's like New Thought weaponized or something like that. I'm misquoting him, but
mhm.
yeah. So I mean, it's really kind of like how I found myself through the music and through those philosophies. And it was then that I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and I haven't looked back since.
Mm. That first guitar, bought it with your own money? Do you remember you buy it like secondhand or new
No,
or?
my dad bought me one for Christmas.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
What was the first song you learned to play on it?
Metallica's One, and then Rick Derringer's Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Yeah.
Very cool. Self-taught or did you take lessons?
Kind of both. I was self-taught at first, and then I got into some lessons to kind of learn some basics, and then just self-taught from there.
Hmm. And then vocals, did you fall into it because none of the other people in the band you were in wanted to sing, or did you want to sing, or how'd that all
I,
start for you?
I think I wanted to sing because I wanted to be the guy up front, you know, like I wanted to be the guy that people were looking at, um, and like the leader of the band, you know. But I didn't really have a passion for singing, and I didn't really have a passion for writing lyrics at all. I was way more focused on the guitar when I started. But then that's probably why I suffered because of that. And you know, being in the Christian school, we had to go to choir for like 2 or 3 times a week. So I was always singing at a young age. And I remember trying out, this is another thing, trying out for like a solo part and not getting it because I wasn't good enough. And it was another thing that just fueled me. I'm like, you know what? I am going to sing. I don't care what the church says. I don't care what the papers say, you know?
Yeah.
And here we are, you know?
Yeah, all these years later doing it, you know. The band, like I said, there's sort of a double-edged sword here. Like today, you can do your album, you can put it out, you can do it all yourself, and you have total like artistic control on everything. But the metal scene isn't as big, at least in the States now, as it was back in the 80s. You know, back in the 80s, you guys, I have no doubt, would have been huge, but you'd have been at the mercy of a producer, of a label. You know, they would have making videos on your dime and stuff. But at the same time, do you ever wish it was 1985?
No, I used to, especially in my youth. I felt like I was always like living in a, like, you know, in a time that was, you know, I was born at the wrong time, basically, is what I was thinking. Um, Especially like in the 90s, you know, I was so into 80s metal, and I mean, you couldn't get shot playing that stuff, you know, and then before the internet, especially, you know,
Yeah.
mainstream controlled all of the culture, you know. So you know, yeah, I mean, I kind of think that, but I would be 10, 15 years older now, and I don't want to be.
Right.
But no, no, I mean, look, I think everything is happening for the right reasons. And you know, I mean, like we're having a conversation now. We've been having conversations for about a decade, you know, I mean, that
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened, you know.
Right.
I like the fact that we're a great band for this time that is can can reach people, you know, like yourself that appreciate um how am I trying to say this? Basically appreciate that we do have a love of the old school and inject enough of that into who we are
Yeah.
that it kind of keeps things going in a way. If we were around 30 years ago, that that wouldn't have happened, you know. And we
Right.
who knows, we might have just been lost in the shuffle. We wouldn't have the opportunity to put our music on the internet and be known by people. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did think that for many years, but I'm at a point now in my life where, you know, I'm really things things are working out the way that they need to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Great. Just a great, great album. So we go out on tour. You got this big worldwide tour planned and everything. What comes up after that? Is there an Outsider Part 2 in the works, or have you even thought that far ahead, or you got just some other stuff going, or?
I have not thought that far ahead about music. I never do. I'm not writing any new songs. You know, I'm just living in the moment of this record, and we're going to keep touring on it for the next couple of years, and then we'll see what happens.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Jarvis, has there been anything that I didn't ask you, anything you wanted to talk about when it came to, this album or Night Demon or anything in this interview?
No, not really, man. I think we covered all the bases here.
All right. Hopefully I asked you some new questions, some stuff you hadn't been asked
Yeah,
before.
definitely.
Well, I'm gonna wind this up, of course, with my silly questions. These
Okay.
I'm really hoping are questions you've never been asked before. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. First car you bought with your own money.
It was a Ford Explorer, kind of like the Jurassic Park style one.
Ah, nice. If you could speak any language instantly, what language would you pick?
German.
German? Go over to Germany and know what they're actually order a brat and full on German, right?
I mean, everybody speaks English there, but like we go there so much that I, if I could understand the language, I could be a little more humorous with them, you know?
Right. Now, I praised your talents when it comes to metal, with singing, with guitar and songwriting and everything else. Is there a secret talent you have that no one knows about? Are you like a master carpenter or a really good car mechanic or something like that?
Um, I don't think there's a secret hidden talent. I have no passion for carpentry, but we did build our own studio here in this warehouse, only out of necessity. So I did learn a lot of stuff there. But really, besides, I mean, music is my main passion. Besides that, it's screenwriting, you know, and
Hmm,
film. I
okay.
mean, that's where it lies there, you know. And you know, also I manage quite a few bands, so stuff in the music industry. You know, I'm very creative in business.
Cool. Last music you listened to other than your own?
That would have been yesterday. Thin Lizzy,
Nice, nice. Favorite toy growing up as a child?
GI Joes,
G.I. Joe's. Do you travel light or heavy?
light,
Light.
very light.
If you could pick a television show to have a song from The Outsider placed in, what TV show would you pick?
Does it have to be currently running?
No, it can be whatever. We'll slap it in a repeat.
Twilight Zone.
Well, oh, very cool. Very cool. Last one. This is the one we have the most fun with. If they were to make a biopic of your life, what actor would you pick to play you? And it's your movie, your life. You can pick anybody.
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke. Right. I like that. I like that a lot. Jarvis, as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Once
You
again,
too, man.
been talking with Jarvis Leatherby here from Night Demon. We go back about 9 years now. The new album is called Outsider, coming out March 17th. They can order it right from the band's Bandcamp site, correct? I like to point people in that direction.
Yeah, nightdemon.net has everything on there.
Cool. And of course, you guys have the podcast going as well, which I think is fabulous. So much for the metal community. You know, you tune into Night Demon and you're tuned into metal is what it's all about.
That's it, man. We are 136 consecutive weeks running with the podcast, and for the hardcore fan, you'll find out everything you want to know about any of our music and all this stuff. And for the casual listener, it's basically, you know, a peek behind the curtain of how a modern heavy metal band in the underground operates and goes out and makes a living being a band in 2023.
Absolutely. I mean, what I admired most of you guys, and we talked about this, I think, in the first interview, is you guys are a total DIY band from day one. You know, you've done it yourselves the entire way, and I think that's incredibly admirable.
Thank you so much, Lance.
All right, Jarvis. Much success to you in the future. May all your travels be safe and your shows sold out.
Thank you, my friend. Hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Take care, brother. We'll talk again soon.
See ya.
Bye bye.